Yeah, I guess to each his own or her own. Um, we live in an individualistic kind of world. We can blame capitalism, but capitalism is a byproduct of people. I think if if the West didn't bring in capitalism, it would have sort of come to be here too. Uh, you know, it, I kind of look at the old uh, African leaders, um, like Shaka Zulu. He started as a soldier and then he worked himself up the ranks until he finally became king. But when he lost his plot, uh, he sort of wanted to take the kingdom with him. It was sort of like the kingdom is his, and that can also be viewed. It's selfishness. Even though people aren't sort of like possessions, but at that time, it was a capitalistic kind of move. If you sort of look at capitalism from a different angle, and we haven't really created something better than capitalism. I think it will always spring up because each and every individual wants to be successful. Uh, yeah, this is what I noticed when I sort of see people's behavior. Like when I was engaging certain people, there's always that negative feedback of what do you have to gain or what do you want to gain, and most of the time there wasn't really anything. If anything, I wanted to gain experience as well as ideas. Um, that's kind of wealth to me at this moment, as well as mutual understanding. But that's how I sort of see it now. And you could say that maybe because of where I live or whatever, I haven't experienced the stage of really being in desperation, which is absolutely wrong. I grew up in Safari, right? Right after independence, there was a lot of paranoia around Safari, and there were lots of abusive homes where men would beat their wives, and I remember one incident at the open market where a woman beat her husband. So and our house at Safari is sort of close to Kehem, which was regarded as the informal settlement. And you had a lot of people that drank traditional brews, and afterward acted out. So to be honest, I have good experiences about it, but I also, I notice the bad elements. There was a time when I could sort of see that things were going really bad, but as a child, you sort of don't have the weight on your shoulders to sort of hold back. But in the same breath, as a caring child, you feel like you want to play some sort of role. And when I grew up in Safari, a lot of things happened in Safari, and there were different people with different beliefs. It was the time when I remember when UNITA sort of no, it was MPLA when MPLA came into Rundu, and they went into shops, and they would just they would take a trolley, fill it up, and they work with their AK-47s and the guns on their hips. So they would take their trolleys, fill them up, and then exit. When the security guard or the teller asks them, they just look like, do you want to get shot? So they still had that guerrilla battle war kind of a mindset. And when UNITA eventually came closer to the border, and there was like a fight between UNITA and the NDF, I can remember because we heard the shots, and apparently something I can confirm, there was a bomb that sort of hit the NBC Stadium's what do you call it, radio cell or whatever. And it was a frightful moment because for a lot of people panicked. Like you could tell the whole street panicked. There were people with briefcases, and people were like, where do we go from here? Because there was that sense of war coming in due to the unstable nature of Angola at that time, and the openness of the border. The border's kind of closed right now, but it isn't closed completely. So when it comes to certain experience, I have sort of experienced them, but I don't view them in terms of class. That's what I can see. Class. You can call me a classless person, whether that means I don't have class in terms of what I wear, or I don't have class in terms of what I don't possess. It's okay. I don't mind. I think class or classism is, something that's a part of capitalism. And, people don't let go of class, but at the same time, they want to sort of move away from capitalism. It's kind of like a juxtaposition. You want something, like someone looks in the box and there's a cat, and then someone else looks in the box and there's no cat. The juxtaposition where you have a moment of sort of two realities. So people want to live in an environment that is free and fair. But in order for people to live in an environment that's free and fair, and people, including myself, we kind of have to let go of our selfish needs, which we have a lot. And it's a natural trait, once again. It's a natural trait to have, that sort of self-measurement and, importance. You look at cattle, before the West came to Africa. If you had a lot of cattle, then you were considered very rich. You have a lot of cattle and your homestead was really big and you were rich. There was such a thing as someone that is rich before the West came in and sort of changed the currency that was used to define a person as rich. But I think that the character of capitalism was there. Albeit when it came to land could be shared, because that was close to the time when people would move away from an area after they've utilized most of it. They've gotten what they needed. So that made land kind of a disposable product, because there was a lot of land and they want a lot of people. But after independence, the sparsity of Namibia shows when you have the south that is really dry, right? They don't get a lot of rainfall. Then you have the north that does get rain, and the perfect farming environment but it's communal. And I think the whole communal area ideology, let me call it ideology, is it evolved in of itself, because more the numbers grew for people. And when South South Africa set up the borders and the Bantustans and all, when they cut Namibia into segments, isolating people from, sort of going from one place to the other place. This meant that as the population grew, and these are my, this is my thinking right now, as the population grew, the need for certain things also grew. And the best solution to that, especially when it comes to land, is when someone comes and asks for a piece of land, you give it to them. It's seen as it's an African practice, Ubuntu, you share, and by sharing, you sort of enrich yourself. But there was still those people that had more than they needed. I guess you can call them mini capitalists. But there were people who had more than they needed. And this is excluding the chiefs. So, what sort of economic, what sort of economic plan can we set up for Namibia where all Namibians will benefit? Because you want everybody to be happy. You don't want to sort of please the majority and then displease the minority. And you don't want to please the minority and displease the majority. And I know that there are people in government that already know this and are working up the solutions. But I'm just kind of go with my sort of view or approach on this. So how do you sort of please everybody? Do you apply Marxist? Do you apply the Marxist system, the communist system, the systems that failed, or do you sort of mix them up? But in the end, capitalism will win out because people want to sort of elevate themselves. They want to be seen and they want to be recognized. This confusion was also there for me, where there was like this talk of me wanting fame. I think fame was sort of misinterpreted from what I myself was hearing and what I had in my mind. And the same works for the systems. They will be different for people because there are always people in society that will escalate faster and on top of the others. And when they do, you can have all of those ideas and all that progress and do things yourself, right? You get subordinates. And, you know that if you give the subordinate too much, what will happen when the service is no longer needed as much? That's all capitalist thinking. But the way forward, according to me, of course, I think the way forward is to try and elevate the communal areas to become less productive, to produce, to improve the agriculture in the north. And I'm talking about the holes, as they call them, the Ovambuland and the Okavango, and what they call now Zambezi. They call it Zambezi now. And it's kind of tricky because I spoke to someone who I won't mention, it wasn't really a dialogue based on that specific thing. But what came up was he'd been to Lundu, right? He'd been to Lundu, and he'd been to Lundu Beach, and he'd been to the lodges and all that stuff. But those are the places where the higher class go to get entertained. And those are the places that most people who can would prefer to go to because they are cleaner and they are safer, right? And the other places that are left, other places where you have the disgruntled youth and the disgruntled midlife people, and the elderly who who go retell how life was, and how it was better before than it is now because of the pressure brought on by the world economy. And all of this can be fixed if we become an agricultural country, which is what made Namibia powerful to begin with. That's where Namibia sort of got its wealth from. I mean, you can dig up diamonds, you can dig up uranium, but you can't eat them, right? And before you sell them, you obviously need the energy to work and extract these minerals, and that energy for human beings comes from food. Then, so the innovation that I think is needed by the country, which is agriculture, is its constraint behind the red line. And I still don't understand why. Maybe it's because the people that are high up in the government I know they respect tradition, they respect traditional law, and to sort of take that kind of system to the communal areas would sort of seem like they are infringing upon those areas there. Because the solution that was brought up, I think, was to sort of divide the places into areas. And I think, that will definitely cause an uproar in the community, because as soon as you fence stuff up, you apply capitalism. That's what you're doing. You're saying, I own this, this is mine. When I die, my child will get it, and when he dies, his child will get it, and so forth. The ideology, spearheaded by capitalist mentality. I don't think they need to fence the areas up. I think what they need to do is to establish areas where they can do agriculture, where the people can, do agriculture, and where the people themselves, the community, can have shares, right? So if the project is successful, doesn't matter how long it takes, the people will benefit from their work. For more than the labor that they put in, they will also have, they would have invested, and they can, sell their portion, or they can keep it, but it's empowering a community in this manner. And I don't think that a person needs to go and explain the long book version of everything in order to get people to sort of participate in this. It's simple. If it's said just like I'm saying, it's simple to understand. The economics of the behind the red line in the towns, they do work like the economics in the city and in the rest of the world. But the side of the village is completely different. The currency there is people. The currency there is people, the children that help the ghetto, and the people that plow the fields, and the food that they get. So what you want to do is to sort of transfer that without infringing immediately on the culture and tradition of the people. Step by step, slowly. When things are done step by step, slowly, everybody learns. And the best way for people to learn, especially in the rural areas, is by doing things, with their hands, doing the things with themselves. And I have to say something quickly here. I'm not undermining the people in the rural communities. I'm not undermining them. A lot of them study, go to university, get good jobs, and come up, to Cochuarongo, or wherever, to get jobs, and that's the system that sustains them. But I think, thinking ahead, the crisis that we might end up facing is a crisis where you have a lot of people employed by the civil servants. You have a lot of civil servants, and you don't have a lot of private work groups, and that imbalance of that imbalance will obviously create a sense of bias, because the private companies will always feel like they are being left out, and the civil servants are being handed things. When salaries are increased for civil servants and all of that, it's good for them, they live in the downside. But what happens at the villages? What kind of transformation is brought there, apart from the Chinese who got deep in the bush and built the Chinese have seriously come out of nowhere and overtaken our government. They have built shops deep in the bush. If they can do that with the little resources that they have, what's stopping our government from doing the same? And I think what's stopping them mainly is a lack of vision, a lack of innovation. Alright? With the vision and innovation, you'll be able to attract more investors. Because most of the countries that invest in Namibia, they don't really invest in the rural areas. They mostly invest in the towns, the hospitals, maybe transport systems and all that. But they don't invest in human capacity or human growth, and human growth, with mind. And this isn't being pushed. This isn't being pushed. If you have a group of people that you want to empower, there are a group of people that you want to empower, and you don't think they totally understand your plan or where you're coming from, the best thing to do is to sort of show them how to do it. Show them how to do it, and they will. The university in India, the university where I forget the name, but the requirement to get into that university is basically having no requirements. It's a university for people that never got the opportunity, which is the opposite of Namibia. But that university is super successful. They have their engineers and teaching women, especially women, how to make their own solar powered stoves and solar powered generators. Women doing it themselves. And there was even a lady who was taught dentistry, an illiterate woman that was taught dentistry. Okay? So, instead of overestimating what needs to be done, there is, the looking at the simple parts of, like the president election. We don't just want people with degrees, we want people that can also do things with their hands. But picking the things that are being done with their hands has to sort of impact the whole community. And the idea of the community coming together and setting up agricultural projects, group by group by group, I think, that's, I would love to see that. And it will all be dependent on the environment there. And, it's the best way to uplift a community instead of just building a shopping mall where people go out and buy more than, they put in more money than they get out, and the cashiers are considered as casuals. And for a developing country, that's a big tragedy. To have people that are sort of disposable. I think that is a really bad tragedy. And there have been a lot of strikes about this. There were these service station attendants who went on strike about this. And a lot of people were too scared to go on strikes. Now you can understand the business aspect of all this, where you can't really give them a raise because of the quality of work that they put in, right? Which is why we sort of need to move away from that sort of job recruitment, the style of job recruitment. Move it away from there into another direction. And I think there are lots of people out there who can come up with great, brilliant ideas as long as they are allowed to sort of have ideas. I might end up talking for 50 minutes again. Yeah, and shout out